Ah, I'm so peeved.
Are you peeved? Well, you're on the
Yes.
perfect episode to talk about your peeves.
All right.
Yeah, but not your peeves,
Yeah, just my peeves.
just your peeves. Yes, welcome back to the Always Right podcast, where we're going to be talking about pet peeves.
Yep, exactly. I want to have fun with this one.
Yes. Yeah, so, I mean, and we've done a similar episode. I might have even called it something different. Where we've talked about some of the things that just drive us crazy. But we're going to kind of isolate some of the pet peeves that we have. Not only with our own writing, but with other writing, just in general writing, whatever. Let's get started. You want to go through the what? What are you
Yeah,
laughing
I
at?
love this. I love the first one because it drives me nuts. It's like a passive voice overload. And when someone writes like the ball was thrown by the boy, it's passive. You need something like the boy threw the ball. I mean, for one, it cuts down your wording. It gets to the point. It's more punchy. It's more energetic than the first version.
Yeah.
Listeners, what do you think sounds better? The ball was thrown by the boy, or the boy threw the ball. I want to say the ball threw the boy, but
The ball.
it can't
Well,
happen.
that would be pretty interesting. If the
That
ball,
would.
you know what? Screw you. I'm
Yeah,
going to
I'm
grow some
tired of
legs
you
and I'm
throwing me
going to
around.
throw this boy across the.
Yeah, I'm tired of playing war ball. Let's play boy ball.
Yeah,
So,
so that's actually more interesting and a way more compelling story, and I probably might read that one.
Mad Ball. I'm gonna write a book
Yeah.
called Mad Ball now.
Yeah. Ball's tired of being kicked across the field and these second graders throwing at each other. Anyways,
You got
but
another passive
passive.
active. What's another
Yeah,
one?
passive active examples here. Yeah, like the song was sung by the choir, or the choir sang the song.
The song was sung by the choir. Yes, and I
It's
see
almost
this
like
a lot. Oh, it drives me nuts.
Sally sells seashells by the seashore.
Yeah,
It's almost like tongue twisters, passive versus active in a sense. Ugh. Sorry, I think I'm getting your coughing.
I hope not.
No,
I just want to
dry.
wheeze it out.
Oh my gosh, just stay off the sixth
Everybody's got it though.
day.
Everybody's. I have artists on tour that's been hit with it, and it's
Yeah.
just lasting for weeks. I'm not sick, but it's
Flu
just
COVID are everywhere. Like
yep.
I've had 2 clients this week with COVID. One with
Really,
flu, yeah, that had to
yeah,
reschedule. So a lot of people just it's tis
yeah.
the
This wasn't
season.
COVID. Influenza A. I think my wife brought it home from work. So
Yeah, and there's that variant of the flu A that's also running rampant too, that H5.
that's probably what I had. She got tested, but the test didn't say whether it was H5. It just said influenza A,
Yeah,
and
I don't know how
you
that
have it for
because I
about a
know how
week.
it works. I think there's like a special test for that. Oh, my murder of crows is out there in the backyard.
Oh, cool.
Did I tell you I was collecting a murder?
No, I did not, but it seems appropriate for the book you're writing.
Full. There's
Yep.
a full murders or full birds in my murder. Yeah, they're huge crows. Anyways, continuing. Wordiness, the curse of excess. This is one of my pet peeves. And will go over something I've written and try to like take words out, but then I try to be careful because sometimes you need a little bit more, description. You need more of the showy stuff. So there's that fine tuning in it. Sometimes it's hard to grab, but I do not like overly wordy sentences and paragraphs that have the a lot. I don't like overly don't overly tell me stuff. Like I'm like, I just can't even imagine because you've told me everything.
Yeah, and this was me. I mean, definitely, like working with Rich definitely helped. I was always adding way too many words in. And he's like, wow, every paragraph of yours I could cut in half. But you learn as you go
Yeah.
along.
When 5 words can replace 10 words, do it, please. You know what I mean? It's like if you can tell me in 5 words versus 10, then the problem's solved.
Yeah, so something like the meeting for the board commenced at 2 p.m. versus the meeting started at 2 p.m. Because that's a little less wordy, more tight. I know you saw I added a few words in there to make it a little more wordy. But I was counting. My ADHD brain it was counting what you had. I was like, wait a minute, that's pretty dang close. Let me throw a couple more in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, the
Well,
second is shorter, gets straight to the point. Go ahead.
we talked about this before. Yeah, we talked about this before in episodes where it's like $5 words. They're too expensive. Don't use them in every sentence. Don't use all these big words. That will like go through me when it's like I was trying to read 50 Shades of Grey because everybody was reading. I'm like, okay, let's see is the writing that great. I didn't even get past to check chapter 2 because I'm like, the dialogue wasn't bad, but the descriptive paragraphs prior to the dialogue was just thesaurus vomit. Using thesaurus words that didn't fit the situation. And I'm like, yes, this word means the same thing, but it's not for this particular scenario.
Yeah, there's a producer, a singer named Sahaj Tikkanen is in this band called Raw. I love Sahaj. Phenomenal voice. And some of the best advice he ever given me, actually put this in Raise Your Voice, is you gotta write your songs, which is transferred over into my fiction, very conversational. Just like you said, you don't need those big $5 words. If you were telling somebody a story, would you say it commenced at? No, it started.
I
Don't
mean, if I
use
was
them.
talking in a British accent, I would.
Well, yeah, but that's your other personality.
Alter ego.
But it's like write your story like you would tell it to somebody else. Don't go in your thesaurus and look, where could I use a bigger word for this? Keep it simple, keep it conversational.
Yeah. Well, so the example I hear, it's like, due to the fact that the weather was bad, the event was cancelled. British accent, okay? If we make it more concise, it's like, well, the weather was bad, so we canceled the event.
Yeah, and that's how you would say it in a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and that is the thing. Moving on to that topic in dialogue, does it sound natural? You would not, if you're thinking inside your head, would you keep saying I to myself, like, oh, I don't think so? And I would probably, you wouldn't be talking to yourself that way. If you're making your character sound as if though they're having an internal discussion, how would you talk to yourself? You wouldn't address yourself in first person or even say it properly. You might make it a little bit more street slang to yourself, like, oh,
Yeah,
what the
you
flip?
want to get to the point.
Like, why the flip am I talking to myself? Like, what the heck? Like, how would you sound to yourself, like when you're like talking to yourself out loud? Write it that way. All right.
Clichés. Yeah,
Cliché.
overused phrases. I love this one.
Yeah, the overuse of phrases. Yeah, and this is something like it's like redundant. That like this has been done before. I've seen this movie before. I've seen this story happen. Please give me something different.
You got some good ones here, and I had to tell a funny story. So you got like think outside the box. At the end of the day, it is what it is. These are boring phrases that we know. Don't stick though. I mean, if you stick them once in writing, it's fine, but not overdo it. Back when I was working construction, this isn't a common phrase, but I used to say better you than me. So I was riding to work with my boss, and my cousin was in the back seat of my car. And Scotty, the boss, he was like, "Man, I was out on the road last night, and we hit a deer." I said, "Better you and me." And I had a flat tire, had to change it. Better you and me. I said this to him for like 3 or 4 days on different things. We're driving to work, and my cousin's asleep in the back. And I said, "There comes a deer across the highway." Emerson raised up, "Yeah, it's a deer," lays back down. And the next thing I know, my boss Scott's like, "Watch it." Boom! The deer hit our car, swung around, knocked out my windows. Glass went all over Emerson. And I pulled over. I was really silent. And Scott turns to me and he says, "Better
Better
you
you
than
than
me."
me.
So at that moment, I learned, yeah, I need to quit
Your
saying these.
catchphrase can be repeated. It's like,
Yes. So
yeah,
do not overuse phrases. They'll come back to
yeah.
bite you.
What? What'd you say?
They'll come back to bite you, or knock out your window.
Oh, I literally thought you said they'll come to the bayou. I was like,
That's because it's my Kentucky. They will come back to bite you,
got it. Hmm. Oh yeah.
but only
Yeah.
once in the blue moon.
Seriously. Yeah. Well, that's one of the cliches I wrote down was once in a blue moon. I used to say, oh, once in a purple moon. They're like, what's a purple moon? I'm like, well, that's even rarer than a blue moon. But rarely a moment of brilliance shines through. But this would go back to the over wordy type situation too. At the same time, you got to balance it out.
Think
And
through, and honestly, for using like pseudo write, I'm sure we could prompt it to catch those redundancies.
well, and you can. So what I find, and this is just me overly being, I will take everything, I'll write stuff, use pseudo-write for like, it's very great with finding new phrases and like bulleting those out and their plugins and stuff. Once I've written a chapter, I'll put it into Grammarly, and Grammarly will catch the overuse of a word. Like, oh, you've used this word multiple times, you might want to use something different. So it's almost like a checks and balances, because pseudo-write doesn't do that unless you copy it all and like tell it to customize, don't overuse a word, but you can only do so many words. So you may not be able to highlight an entire chapter to get that to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the only thing, is making sure and sometimes I'll even once I put it into a Word document, if there's a word that I like and I don't want to use it too much, I'll write it down. And then when I go and put it in my Word document for the entire
Do a
stuff, like all the
search.
chapters, I'll search it out. How many times do I use this word? So that's also to make sure that you're not overly
And then
doing
you're
it.
like, well, let me look into thesaurus and see what word I can use that's in place of it.
Yes.
Oh boy, we got a biggie coming up. Grammar and punctuation
Listen, I
blunders.
am not an editor. I am terrible at grammar, and I know this. But at the same time, I feel like there is a certain thing of professionalism that you need to understand, is the there,
Yeah.
and the yours, how the yours work. Um,
And the big one is, and you actually got it on here, the use of its, IT apostrophe S.
mhm.
And or even another one we could add is I'm. Like I used to write, I am doing this. And Rich was like, dude,
No, say
you,
I'm.
I'm shorten it. Take out any word you
No,
can.
and Rich will get this whenever he edits my book. But when I have my angels or speaking, my angels are going to speak with less slang. They're going to speak more, like slower, and like, I am doing this, like it's going to be like a different type of speaking versus shortening it and stuff. But I mean, that's different if
But
you're
that
trying to
works for the
build a
book.
character that way.
And that's
Or yeah, or if you have
intentional.
a character who's autistic that's going to say things in a certain way that may not fit to what you would think another person would say, that's the character, you know? Or if they are very highly slanged, in their dialect, you need to, make sure that stays consistent with that. So that would be different. That wouldn't be a blunder. That would not be a punctuation or grammar blunder.
But this is why you say here, we never edit your own work. I
Uh-huh.
think that's been the biggest mistake, especially with Kindle years ago. Lack of quality control. Everyone's spitting out a book. Just, I mean, humans, you're even working with Rich, he's going to miss something. It's just human nature. That's okay. You see it
Yeah.
in big published books, but have a professional editor and not your cousin who teaches sixth grade English. Hire somebody who does this day in and day out.
Yeah. And the there thing. So
Yeah,
that
it
one's
drives me
pretty
nuts.
easy. And I've seen this on professional Facebook pages where people in big bold put THERE when they're talking about
They are.
their subject, like they're like a person. And I'm like, oh, you put it in bold too. Like, I make mistakes, but I'm like, oh, this isn't bold. My husband will catch it, or someone, hey, they'll message me, like, I'll go fix it real quick. Because I'm terrible at grammar. But I'm just like, oh, you gotta read back through that.
But you catch it. I have to, when I see that, because I don't want to be a grammar Nazi, I have to stop and scroll by. And because somebody else is going to comment on their page and say, it's THEY apostrophe RE, not THERE or
But
whatever.
have you seen where people will post something that is grammatically wrong, but
On
people will
purpose.
comment grammatically wrong and keep it
Yeah.
going?
Yeah.
I guess those are funny. Well, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I don't know. I can't remember. There,
Sorry.
there, there. There.
There. And the your, if you can say you are in that sentence, it's you apostrophe re. That's
Yeah.
simple.
You
Are you
are.
saying you are, or are you just saying you're? And it's just that's a very simple, like, how would I do that? That's very, very
Like
easy.
your car, possessiveness.
It's not
But
our car, it's your
no,
car. Right.
exactly.
Yeah. And we talked about this briefly before, as we are getting ready to just hit record, was where do your commas go?
Yep. And I know there's different styles,
Yeah.
but
But if you say red, comma, blue, and white, I think red is one, blue and white is a separate. Like, they're together.
I don't. I mean, if it's more than three, I always like red, comma, white, comma, and blue. I understand where that comes from.
Yes, it should be red, comma, blue, comma, and white.
Oh,
That
I
means
thought you
it's
said.
three separate things.
Oh, I thought you said white and blue were one thing.
If it's red, if you say red, comma, blue, and white, I'm going to think one is red and one is blue and white.
Yeah,
There's two things.
exactly.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is where the comma lies is how I'm envisioning this.
Yeah, I wish I could remember some of the ones I saw. I was like, commas are important. There was something about dine for free or da 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 and children eat for free, but the way it read, since there was no commas, it was like come and eat
I think it
children
was
for
like
free.
children eat for free or something like that. Yeah, what makes it look like you're eating the children.
Yeah. And I'm like, why? And I've actually seen this around here, even misspellings on like people have signs made and they'll put them on like on the poles. There was one for like roofing. I forget how they misspelled one word. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Imagine if it said we are roofing.
Exactly. It was something like that. I'm like, that's not what
I don't
is
think I'd
wrong.
advertise that.
I will say
Cover your drinks.
I did copy that and post it on Facebook, and I got a lot of replies on it. This has been a couple years ago, and I will say that sign disappeared pretty quick. So it must have gotten back to the owners like, oh my gosh, how did we have these printed up and miss that?
Yeah, how did we miss that part? All right. Tone and style shifts. This is so imagine a story in a formal tone and suddenly switching to like this slang in the middle. It's going to throw you off unless you have characters that have two different types of dialect.
Absolutely. And I had that in Crisis Artifact. I had this old man Galton, and he'd be like, cantankerous, and you bastages. And he'd have these weird words that you're like, that sounds dumb. But that was his character. That's how he spoke. But if you had one character and you're switching to slang in the middle, yeah, it's going to mess with
It's
the
gonna be
reader.
disorienting. You're gonna you need to make sure that you're keeping it concise, keeping it consistent, maintaining that what's the word? Smooth. You want to maintain the smooth flow of reading. Read it out
Absolutely.
loud to yourself. We've said this before. Read it to yourself and see how it flows. Are you like hesitating as you're pausing in a sentence where you're getting lost? I just did this last night. I had a sentence where it was like this character's in her mind, and like before she could even like think, and I'm like before she could even respond, and I'm like, because she's not hearing words come from her own lips, and this and this, and then it goes back to where the sentence. I'm like, this is too confusing. I got to take some of this out. So I got to rearrange this. Say it out loud, because you might be writing and it sounds okay when you're writing it, but when you read it to yourself again, it may not flow as well.
Yeah, no, I love that you're saying that because I could read a 400-page book that's smooth quicker than I could read a 200-page book that's all jarring and all over the place. So it's all about that flow.
Well, and I did this an example, and I had something like this in a one of my classes, and I can't remember which class it was. It was an anthropology class, but and it was interesting because most of it was very scientific. They were posting scientific statements, this is what this article said, blah blah. But the person who was writing it was very slang. They were they were less formal, so it did make it kind of jarring. You're like, am I reading a, I felt like I was reading just someone's memo essentially, but not a peer reviewed article. Anyways, so one of the things I put up here for an inconsistency where it's like, in the realm of scientific inquiry, things can become quite complex. But let me tell you, it's pretty wild out there. So just kind of switches.
Like two different writing styles.
Yeah, consistent would be in the realm of scientific inquiry, complexity reigns supreme. So it's more like you got to keep. It's like when Daniel was on, and he's talking about the tropes and the consistency of font styles that go with certain genres. So you would not have Comic Sans be on a cover of a murder mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense. There is a flow. There is a somewhat consistent box that you need to stay in when you're using certain types of words alongside other types of dialect.
Weak verbs.
You just come in slow. Weak.
Dog was running. That's kind of weak. Okay. But if you said the dog sprinted, man, I can actually visualize that in my head. I could see that dog huffing and puffing and just moving along. But the dog was running.
Dog bolted.
But this is more show versus tell too.
Well, and if you say the dog was running, yeah, but how was he running fast? Because he could be like, slow running.
Was he trotting? Yeah.
Hurry? Yeah, because if you're using the word sprinted or bolted lets you know that he bolted because something maybe spooked him.
And yeah, and you're thinking, or he saw a rabbit or something. Like, okay, what is he going after?
Or if you said like the dog bounded, like, so was he was not only running, but he was headed towards something. So those words create a visual aspect as to not only is the dog running, I've got the running in there, but he's got a purpose. Is it because he's scared? Or is he headed towards something? Yeah. So weak verbs will.
Yeah. At the end of the day, when you read it, can you see it like it's in a movie or a TV show? I mean, I guess I could see a dog was running, but it doesn't really.
Yeah, but for you as the writer, you probably imagine how the dog is running. But is your reader going to be able to do that?
Absolutely. So,
and I've been going through paragraphs. Like, if I put this out there, like, it sounds really good. I'm writing, oh, this is beautiful. This is golden. I like this paragraph right here. But then I'm writing, I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. I just literally said this, but now I'm saying this. Well, because this sounds beautiful, but I really want to do this. I got to change this. Because you have confused them, like, if they're scared, but then you just told me they're relaxed. But then again, you tell me they're scared. Like, which one are they? Just because you want them to, if your character is going through emotions, make sure it's staying, you got
to have that flow. And then plus, Karisa, I mean, just like you described, you could be the author and you could be writing it and you see it in your mind, but you're not totally relating it in the way you're writing the words. You can see it, plain as day. You know what's going on, but like, I wanted them to know that dog, bolted. He was scared, but I wrote the dog was running.
But I'm adding a tagline on there not tagline, but I'm adding extra to not only just the weak verbs, making the verbs match consistently. We kind of pair it with So if your dog is bolting, but then you talk about this dog like just sitting there normal, this dog's gonna be out of breath. Remember that, like, kind of like whatever you made that dog do in the previous paragraph, make sure it follows through to the end of the paragraph. Like,
finally caught up to this, and he's panting now. Hold up, boy.
Yeah, the dog's probably going to want some of Jamie's water.
Exactly. He's not going to be snoring.
Yeah. A weak version would be the cat is sitting on the windowsill. The strong version would be Jamie's cat perched on the windowsill of his garage. Now, overload. Why are we being so silent?
Because I'm reading and I don't have my glasses on. So I was just going to let you take off with it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is jargon overload. So if you're writing to a specific audience, again, understand the terms. Willow talks to me about fantasy stuff. Like, I don't read fantasy, so when she's talking to me, I'm like, yeah, and she's talking about, like, when we were in we were in MegaCon at the one night we stayed in, and we were trying to create pictures of these two, I'm saying swords because to me they're two swords, like a pirate sword, but she called them
sabers.
No, she called them rapiers.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So she called them rapiers. AI could not create rapiers at all. I'm like, I can't even imagine what this is. So I'm like, oh, show me. And so she shows me, like, oh, okay, so pirate swords. Yep. That's how I envision them. So there are technical terms, and she knows these technical terms. I do not. But use those terms because your readers who are used to reading fantasy will know those things. Make sure you know those general used words so that way it doesn't overload you with too much, I guess. But at the same time, don't put too many technical terms. There's like a middle ground.
Yeah, because like you got a couple examples here, and this one it's too much for my brain. Jargon heavy. The ROI on our latest paradigm shift will optimize our deliverables. Huh? But if you want to make it clear, The return on investment from our new changes will improve our results. And that's
Yes.
down to earth. That's conversational. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I can move on. If not, I would get stopped and reread that sentence a couple times to it.
This
And
happens
it makes sense, but
so
it's just too heavy.
this happens so many times in college paper, or when you have to read an article, that they want to sound so technical that the jargon overload is like overwhelming. And so it's really nice. And I do this. Like, I'll read something and I'll skim and I'm like, oh my gosh, like they keep going. Like, they'll use a whole paragraph that could have easily been one sentence, you know? And so I'll take that PDF, put it in AI and say, okay, please break this down. And now you can ask it for a detailed breakdown. If you do a simple one, it's going to be like a couple paragraphs. But if I ask for a detail, it'll go page by page and give me what's going on that page. I'm like, okay. So then once I know what's on that page, I can look for key words that I need to understand when I'm studying. But if you've got me 121 pages of stuff that could be simplified into 5 pages, that's annoying. Like, just so you can hear yourself talk.
Yeah, and I hate that. And it kind of leads into the next one with the comma splices. And yeah, this is a good one. I hate it when I'll read an author and they'll have 42 words in one sentence. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense because you got to think about the rules. If you feel like it really goes together, for one, look at it and see if you can tighten it down and get rid of any $5 words or anything. But if you need that as one complete sentence, use a semicolon, break it in half, or use a word like, comma, and comma, but, comma, or make them into 2 separate sentences. Now, I used to do this a lot, and what Rich always pushed me to do is look at it, shorten it, sweeten it, and make it into 2 sentences. Unless it was like a thought that really belonged with that sentence, then I would use a semicolon. And I don't use a lot of
and that
semicolons.
still comes back to reading it out loud. Does it sound better as a breath or a pause?
Yes. Yes.
Because a breath, like if you're taking, like when you're reading, one is a comma, one is, so a pause. If you're taking a breath, it's a comma. If you're pausing, it's a period and a new sentence.
Or your semicolon.
Yeah. and it doesn't, it's like in music, what's the difference between an eighth note and a quarter note, or a half note, like, or a pause, like, or a rest. Which one am I doing? Am I making the beat go, or am I trying to continue the song? Pause.
Yeah, and the fact you said reading it out loud is really important, because if you take a big breath and you read that sentence, but you're out of breath by the time you get to the end of it, or you need to take another breath, and yeah, you got too many freaking words in that one sentence.
You know what I do a lot? And this is just how I write. Rich can get mad at me all he wants, but it makes it easier for me, because visually, if I'm wanting my character to pause a lot longer than a period, I put 3 periods. I do the little
too. I do too, all the time.
All the time, where it's like a thought, and then I want them. It's almost like I want them to take that 3 period pause between the sentence, but I don't want to create a new paragraph. It still has to flow, but I'm like, especially if my character's in their head and they're like, oh, this thought. Wait, what did it? Oh, wait, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, why am I doing this? Like, if they're struggling internally, there are going to be breaks. It's not going to be a perfect flow. It's not going to be like, oh, I don't know what language that was, but I was just throwing it out there.
Sound like the Peanuts, Charlie Brown.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, that's something that I do with the breaking up of sentences, is listening to it out loud. Do I want it to be more of a breath? Do I want it to be more of a pause? Or do I want it longer? And then I do ... And I haven't figured out how to do this. Maybe someone can comment below or email me, because when I go and copy and ask Grammarly to make it a certain thing, whether I'm writing a college paper where it's fiction or nonfiction stuff, or if I'm doing it in pseudo-write, I'm like, tighten this up for me, make this a little bit more engaging, like change the wording to be a little bit more, there's a phrase I've been using, I can't remember what it is. If I'm looking for a word, I'll ask it to find words or whatever. Sometimes it'll do the word and then the line and then goes on to finish the sentence. It'll be like, well, and then a line and then something. Like, I don't know how to create the line on my typewriter. on my keyboard. I'm like, how do I do
Is
that?
it an underscore line like it's on the bottom?
No, it's like almost like two dashes together, but it's one solid line. I don't know how to do
Yeah,
that. I don't know how to do that on my keyboard.
okay. I have to review. There's a way. I've done this before, but I forgot because
I
and
can do it
sometimes
on
I
my
do it by
phone.
accident. I go dash dash and I make it one big line.
So it will do that in certain things for me, but it won't do it in other things. I'm like I don't know how to do it in my I don't know how to do it on my keyboard. I can do it on my phone because on my phone I can go and click and hold and then give
Yeah,
the option.
yeah.
But to
I
do it
did the
on
same
my
thing with like the
laptop,
degree thing on
can
the
somebody help
zero.
me, please? Somebody
Yeah,
out
somebody
there.
beat me to it. Somebody, one of the listeners, contact us, and then we'll
Yeah.
grow from this. See,
Yeah. See?
and then we'll have you on the podcast to explain how you did it. It'll be a short podcast because it's only about 3 minutes to tell that story. But
Mm. All right. Would you like to talk about dangling modifiers?
yeah, you know what? I never run into this trouble, but it's like you have a phrase and they don't really connect. These words do not connect together. Here's an example that you wrote down: running down the street, the red car was fast. Was the street running? No, the
It's
car
totally
was.
see Dick
It,
run.
yeah,
See,
it doesn't make it. Running down the street, I noticed I couldn't keep up with the red car. It was really fast, and that's still too many words. But the way you read it, I'm like, what the heck does this have? Why? Why is this even in this book?
yeah, like I would agree. That's one of the things. Like if you, and I've talked about this, not specifically naming the author or the book, but there was a book where literally the characters in one paragraph were in a Halloween store and buying Halloween costumes, and the little girl sees a ghost. The very next paragraph, they were at a Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm like, wait, what happened? So it's kind of like
Yeah,
they were
you
running
can't.
down the street, and then they saw a red car, and I'm like, what?
I can't stand that. Loving
Yeah.
chocolate, I decided to go for a ride. I mean, I just it's stupid. But all
This
right.
next one. So this next one is kind of like I have to literally mentally talk myself through these ones
Yep.
because it is confusing unless you use them on a cause and effect a basis.
Yep.
But using the word effect and using the word effect,
Yep.
vice versa, and it's frustrating for readers that understand this, but then it can be very confusing. I feel like.
Same thing with then and then. And I
Yeah,
see this every day on Facebook.
yeah. So how would you put effect and effect, cause and effect?
Why are
I thought
people
you put your
texting me?
phone in vibrate
I
and
did. I forgot I had a couple people like you that can call through. Uh, so effect is like the cause and effect. The effect of taking aspirin is, I get more blood flow. My capillaries.
how did that affect you?
Yeah, exactly. How did that affect you overall? What was the results? And that
Yeah,
is a tricky one.
it is a tricky one because it's almost like I said, I have to talk myself. Is this an effect or is this an effect?
Yep.
Yeah,
I have to think through that one. Then
yeah.
and then, so not so much. But what Kelsey's like, I'd rather shovel snow than THAN stay inside. That's fine. Or then THEN. Which one would work for that situation? Than but a lot of people put I'm getting tongue tied here. A lot of
Rather
people
than,
put THEN.
yeah,
They'll
it's
be like
rather
then.
than.
Yes.
Then is a time frame.
Exactly. So then is when you do. I'd rather shovel snow than stay inside. But what my point was trying to get to, I'll be on Facebook and I'll see THEN, and I'm like, that. No, no.
Yes,
When are you? When?
THEN. Then is a time frame. Then is a rather. Is
Yeah.
a either or.
And if you would think of that going forward, I'd rather, and think of then, or what time will then. Now I can't think of how to put then in a sentence. Then we will go to the pool.
Yeah.
So then you're thinking about that. But yeah, that's a tough one. You just got to read through it, think about it, and ask yourself, when you have THEN in there, does that mean I'd rather? No, it doesn't mean. Okay, it's correct. THAN, I'd rather. Oh yeah, that is correct. Yes. Now we're all dumber for listening to me because I had on my ADHD moment was all over the place.
You do that, then we not get through this episode.
Then
I said
do that
then.
because that
Then.
was the affect of it all.
So this last one I have here is kind of in combination with what we've been talking about, but this is the telling, not showing type effect, where instead of saying she was angry, let's get a little bit more creative and talk about her fist being clenched, jaw being tightened, her eyes, were flashed with rage. Tell me, showing me what she looks like. Don't just tell me she was angry.
And this is a perfect example because we've been saying, hey, you got to get rid of those big words, tighten it down, make a smaller sentence. This is not the case here because, this is a perfect example. She was angry. No, let's say her fist clenched, her jaw tightened, and her eyes flashed. There's nothing wrong with having that many. Yeah, because then you see it. You're like, oh. You can see it in your mind. So there's nothing wrong with having that many. Yep. Got Botox. No.
Yeah. She would have raised her brows if her Botox was not working.
Yep. I'm seeing how red I am today.
You're very cold red down here, Harrison, because I'm looking at the screen. I'm super white, and you're super red.
I'm always red, but you can't see it in the frame, but I got red checkerboard, black on my wall, and
back there.
My face matches it. It's cold down here.
It's cold down here.
I ran out of propane.
Listen, we didn't run out of propane, Billy. You know what the temperature was yesterday?
47.
It is 38 degrees here right now.
Oh, whatever. Seriously? You know what happens, right?
Y'all Ohioans wished your
We're
weather.
Like 20 or something.
What? There you go. Eglin Air Force Base. 30.
It didn't used to always be cold down there. When it was the Gulf of Mexico, it stayed pretty warm.
I will cut that out.
I did it because I knew you would cut it out.
Oh my gosh. You're going to get us on a list.
I know. I thought in my mind as I was like, she'll cut this out, but I won't say it anyway.
I don't know. I might just keep it in for the fun of it.
So, yes, it is pretty cold everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. It's that Gulf of America breeze.
Yep. Indeed.
Gulf of America keeps blowing up here. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to get us in so much trouble.
I love it.
All right. Anyway, so this episode, we have talked about all the things that are considered pet peeves for the basic writing aspects. Not that we don't have more pet peeves out there, because we just don't talk about those on the podcast. But, give us some of your pet peeves. Comment below or send us an email. If you'd like to email some of your pet peeves and want to talk about them later down the road, go to alwayswritepodcast@gmail.com and shoot us an email. Is Jamie, you know what? So where do they go for listening, and where can they listen to it?
They can go to alwayswritepodcast.com.
Yes.
And, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music. You can watch us on YouTube, something like that.
Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast.
Yes. Amazon Music. And where can they watch us?
YouTube. Yeah. But they can watch us somewhere else, right?
Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify. See? Yeah. I know these. As long as you repeat them to me.
Can't be taught.
Yeah.
Oh.
One of us is the child here. I'm not going to say who. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you for listening. And as always, I'm author Karisa DeLay.
And almost forgot. I'm author Jaime Vendera. You kept poking me with that finger, knocking me over, and my brain.
Until next time, thanks for listening, and always write.